Interesting. Well, look, joining me now, I've got spokesperson for Republican Overseas UK, Jennifer Ewing. So let's speak. Jennifer, can you hear me?
Can, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you. So Jennifer, do you want to just give us your reaction on this first?
Sure. I'm not surprised. I'm one of the people that's been calling for this for probably about a year. Anyone that's been paying attention to the, the cognitive decline in the president could have seen that despite what's been kept from us, I think, as the public, or indeed, his own party, maybe, it was just very obvious. There was no way he was going to make it until November. So he finally has stepped down. It's not a great thing for the Democrats, because he probably should have done this quite some time ago, so they could have had their ducks in a row and, had a proper primary and had a real contest. So it puts his own party in a very bad position.
Yes. Can I ask you, Jennifer, though? I mean, one name that hasn't been mentioned so far is Kamala Harris. And of course, she is supremely unpopular, even within Democratic circles. She's widely perceived to be someone who was hired on the basis of her ethnicity and sex, which is pretty much what Joe Biden admitted, was saying that he would definitely have a woman of colour as his VP. So there's a kind of degree of mistrust that she's kind of even a diversity hire. Her popularity, lack of popularity on both the left and the right, suggests that there's absolutely no way. I mean, am I wrong to say this? There's absolutely no way that Kamala Harris could beat Trump. So what are they going to do about that?
Yeah, well, no, I do not believe Kamala Harris could beat Trump at all. And you're right, she was a diversity hire, and Joe Biden himself said, I want to pick a woman of color. So, and if you'll recall, she ran herself in 2020 and didn't even make it through her own state of California. So she dropped out quite early. She's not indeed a good candidate. She was not even very good vice president. So they're in a pretty tricky situation. The fact that he has dropped out before the Democratic National Convention also means that they can't hand over the hundreds of millions of dollars that they've raised to her as the vice president, which they would have been able to do had he accepted the nomination at the convention and then stepped out. So this means, I think what they'll do is they'll have, I hope what they'll do for the Democrat voters and for the country at large is have an open sort of 6-week primary and do lots of speeches and pick somebody. But this is crazy. It's very unprecedented. And I didn't think he would end up being the candidate, but, to resign on a Sunday evening is still surprising.
Can you tell me whose fault is this? Who is to blame for the fact that Joe Biden didn't step down before? Are we talking that this is influence from Jill Biden, which is obviously the speculation of a lot of right-wing media in America? Or is there something else going on here?
I think it's a combination of a few things. I think, don't forget, Joe Biden himself had run for president several times before and had lost. So he finally is able to, become president. He's not going to step down easily. And yes, you're right. I mean, there is very strong influence from his wife, Jill Biden, and indeed his son, Hunter Biden, who, of course, he's been telling us for the last several years he has no professional business relationship with his son. And now it turns out his son is one of his biggest advisors. So a lot of pressure from his family for him to stay in, which, on a human level is quite sad, isn't it? I mean, you would think when you're older and he's clearly in, the deep stages of cognitive decline, you would hope that your wife, your kids, your brothers and sisters would be the ones to sort of guide you into the next stage of your life, but they did not, and it was incredibly selfish. On top of that, we've got an entire, and I do not include GB News in this, by the way, because you guys have reported honestly, but, a lot of the mainstream media has been complicit in hiding this from the American people and indeed the rest of the world. And it wasn't until the debate a few weeks ago, when the jig was clearly up and they could no longer hide it, that the scrambling started to take place, and everybody was trying to, salvage their own reputation, whether this was other Democrat politicians who realized, if you're a senator or a congressman and you're on the ballot this year, having Joe Biden at the top of the ticket was not helping you. But the media also very, very complicit in this. So there's a lot of blame to go around. There's a lot of culpability to go around. But I hope that, on a personal level, I really do hope that he gets the care he needs and, is not humiliated and degraded on the public stage the way he has been for, the last, definitely last few weeks, but I'd even say, last year or so.
Yeah, I'm absolutely certain that a lot of the people who were ridiculing Biden for his various gaffes, for him literally tripping up on a number of occasions, that they wouldn't have done so if it wasn't the case that the Democrats were denying that it was happening. In other words, it wasn't a sort of personal attack on a man who clearly needed help. It was more an attack on a party that was refusing to accept the reality and was actively, it seems, trying to deceive the public. What do you make of that?
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. And, I hope that there is some investigation that goes on to this, because don't forget, he hasn't stepped down as president, right? He's just stepped down as the candidate. So I think we also need to take a look at, if he's not up to being the candidate, what is he doing running the country? And anybody who's heard him speak or watched him move, there is no way he's been running the country, which means somebody else is, or a group of people are. And these are not people that we elected. We elect a president. We don't elect a cabal. And I think there's a lot of questions that need answering.
OK, well, I'd just like to read a brief excerpt from the statement that Joe Biden has issued. He says, "It has been the greatest honour of my life to serve as your president, and while it has been my intention to seek re-election, I believe it is in the best interest of my party and the country for me to stand down and to focus solely on fulfilling my duties as president for the remainder of my term. I will speak to the nation later this week in more detail about my decision." Jennifer Ewing, can I get your reaction to Joe Biden's statement?
Well, I think if you're not fit enough to be the candidate, you're not fit enough to be the president. So I have a problem with that from a national security, standpoint. And, this is just they're slow walking this whole thing into what we've all seen, not all of us, but many of us, which is he is not fit to be the president of the United States and actually in the free world, right?
Yeah.
He's an important man.
OK, Jennifer Ewing, I really appreciate you coming onto the show.